Welcome to Nuanced Conversations, the podcast where depth meets dialogue, hosted by Dr. George E. Hurt. This show explores the gray areas of life, where faith, wisdom, and real-world complexities intersect. No easy answers, just honest conversations that challenge, inspire, and inform. Get ready to lean in, listen closely, and explore the nuance. This is Nuanced Conversations.
Let's trace this migration a little bit, if you don't mind.
Sure.
You're at Morehouse, obviously excelling at Morehouse.
But in a different way.
What do you mean by that?
Morehouse introduced me to what they call the Black preaching prophetic tradition. You know, Martin Luther King went to Morehouse.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, if you're a religion or philosophy major, they have a subtle ambition to turn you into Martin Luther King. But Morehouse really broadened my world in a way that it had not been. And it introduced me not only to Black Christian excellence, but Black excellence across the board. Benjamin Mays, who was not a Morehouse man, but was a PhD from University of Chicago in 1940, created that institution. And for him, he wanted to, this man was so incredible, right, that someone once called him boy on his way to class in Chicago. And he decided never to wear a hat again because the man who called him boy told him to take his hat off. So this guy's so crazy, right? He from 96, South Carolina. He's so crazy. He's in Chicago, and you know what the weather is like there.
Absolutely.
Without a hat on, in protest to how he could be treated if someone made him take it off. That's the guy who built Morehouse.
Wow.
They made us memorize one of his famous quotes, which for me is something of a personal constitution. Tragedy in life is not achieving your goals. The tragedy of life is having no goals to achieve. It is not a calamity to die without having fulfilled your dreams, but it is a calamity not to dream. It's not a disaster not to reach the stars. It is a disaster to have no stars to reach for. Not sin, not failure, but low aim is sin. That was stitched into our minds. And as a result, Morehouse, relative to its size, if you look at its alumni, has just produced some amazing men who carried those ideals, which transcends race. It wasn't about being the best Black. It was about being the best.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you do it so whether no man living, born, or yet to be born could do it any better. So that commitment to excellence, that commitment to being the best, that desire to not only make a contribution, but to be an example, blew my mind. I tell people all the time, it wasn't so much what I read in books, but just in that soil. Then you add to that, at Morehouse, man, it's a factory, Doc, for creating preachers. I mean, because we have mandatory chapel every Tuesday and Thursday. And man, at Morehouse, that's the first time I heard Caesar Clark. That's the first time I heard Charles Adams. First time I heard Otis Moss. Yeah, I mean, like it was, for a preacher, it was heaven. So it broadened my concept of excellence. And you're down there with the best and the brightest from wherever they come from. So, you know, everybody at Morehouse was the class president. You know, everybody at Morehouse was the preacher.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody at Morehouse, you know, had a 1,500 on the SAT and had a GPA of 4. So you're in an environment that is not only stretching you emotionally, but it's stretching you psychologically, because if you can't handle other gifted people, you're just not going to survive.
Mm-hmm.
So it forces you not only to appreciate excellence, but to appreciate excellence in others. And some of my most enduring friends, I mean, Raphael Warnock, who's now a senator. I remember sitting, you know, in chapel with him, talking about the folds on the back of Gardner Taylor's neck. Yeah, I mean, so it was just it was a center of Black excellence, and without question, one of the best decisions of my life. And my dad didn't want me to go.
Why did you want to go?
To be honest, I went down there for something called a prospective student seminar. It was like a week long. Well, no, it's a guy named Gregory Groover. He pastors Charles Street AME Church now in Boston, Massachusetts. He had gone to Morehouse. He preached his trial sermon in my dad's church. And he kept telling me, you need to go to Morehouse, you need to go to Morehouse. So he said he heard they were having like a week long interest session for like kids who were interested. I was like, man, I'll go. And man, it was during homecoming. And the step show was at Spelman. And I saw them women down there. I was like, there's a guy named John Gates. I'll never forget. He was like the coordinator. I had never met someone my age who was so eloquent and whose woman was so fine. I said, man, I want to be like him. I'm going down here. So my desire to go to Morehouse was neither academic nor spiritual nor ethical.
So you did no more research after that? It was just so everything that you experienced, all these pros, all these benefits.
I had been admitted to Yale and I had been admitted to St. John's University and had received full scholarships to both. I came back from that trip and told my daddy I'm going to Morehouse. He almost had a heart attack because, of course, they gave me not a cent.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
I would have made you go to Yale.
Yeah, he was very upset for a long time because he thought, well, I don't think he understood what Morehouse was.
But you didn't either.
I didn't either.
Yeah.
But,
saying that like judgmental, like, yeah,
well,
you didn't understand what Morehouse was. You didn't either. You just went to a step show. John Gates had a fine woman.
but judgmental in the sense, like, I think for him, he assumed it's intrinsic inferiority. That's it's a black school, so therefore it could not be as good as a Yale.
I mean, this is obviously divine providence. We understand that, but at the same time, you didn't think.
Well, I didn't assume that it wasn't. Mm-hmm. You see what I mean? Like, I'm not saying my motives were charitable or honorable.
No, I'm not judging those. I'm not judging your motives. I mean, you're 17, 18 years old. I'm just saying, though.
I didn't assume that it was inferior.
It's a lot of schools you could have went to and visited that would have had, like, fine women and step shows that would not have had.
I'm going to tell you what they didn't have at Yale.
No, not Yale. But if you went to
St.
Southern.
John neither. Yes, Southern, maybe.
If you went down to maybe Tuskegee.
Maybe, but I'm not sure they would have had John Gates, though. That's what I'm saying. The caliber of guy down there is different.
Yeah, I mean, you could have met somebody just with the same swag or the same intellect. I get what you're saying. I'm trying to nuancely free your dad.
Well, here's the difference, right? Here's the difference.
I totally underend.
Here's the difference.
What your father is saying.
Here, no. Here, I'm not. Well. Here's a good way to talk about it. Fast forward 20 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my youngest son, he's at Howard right now.
Mm-hmm.
My oldest son, he graduated from Harvard.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We went to see one of my cousins. She's president of a bank in Columbia, South Carolina. And she asked my oldest son, Malachi, this was last summer. She said to him, well, how come you didn't go to Black college? He's like, well, I grew up in Atlanta. I was kind of over it. I felt like going to Harvard would be better for me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he's not lying in terms of the opportunity that comes. But if you just look at the stats, and you look at the incredible impact and contributions that people who have gone to Morehouse have made, we ain't far behind, and what I'm saying is, in my father's worldview, a black college was intrinsically inferior.
I got you.
And that, to me, was what I think I bristled up against.
I don't think he felt it was intrinsically lower than the white school. I think he thought it was intrinsically lower than Yale, who was doing a full ride.
But he didn't have to pay either way, so it doesn't make no difference.
So, I don't think it's just like you went. You went
both.
to Phoenix University. It was.
I'll meet you halfway.
Full ride at Yale.
Both might be true.
It's true. Yeah. I'm trying to get you to see.
Both might be true.
Especially what we talking
1987.
87. Yeah, especially 87.
He's like, man, why?
Yeah.
Just why? But you know what? It reminds me of a conversation. I think it was generational. Like, the white man's ISIS code. I really think it's generational because when I went to Harvard, I had another professor who I shall remain nameless. He asked me, "Oh, Joe, what do you want to do when you finish? You're highly intelligent, we're gifted. Faculty likes you." I said, "I want to be a preacher." You know what he said to me? Mm-hmm. "Why would you waste your life doing that?" Mm-hmm. He said, "Anybody can do that." Well, I said to him, "Well, anybody can't do it well." Mm-hmm. In fact, I think in a lot of ways, my entire ministry is a protest against that assumption. Well, it was more that to me. It was anybody can judge, like anybody can go to black school.
Well, let's go there. Let's get. Yeah. How did you get? You're at Morehouse. You're selling. You're blowing your mind. The experiences, things of that nature. Obviously, academically, you stay on track. Graduation time.
It's the next box to BA and me. You got to go to seminary. So the question is, what seminary am I going to go to?
What seminaries did you look at?
I only looked at one.
That's
the one I went to, Harvard. Only looked at one, only went to one. For two reasons. I didn't want to go home, which was New York, because I could have gone to Union Seminary. But I felt if I went to Union, I would go to class less than I did when I went to Harvard. And their curriculum, like most traditional, well, first of all, Harvard is a divinity school. It's not a seminary, which was the other source of my attraction.
What's the difference?
Seminaries are typically Christian in their orientation, their beliefs, their faculty, and they give a structured curriculum that's designed principally to prepare you for ministry. A divinity school sees religion as a subject for academic inquiry. Mm-hmm. They don't privilege any tradition. So they look at Christianity the same way they look at Buddhism, the same way they look at Islam. And their objective is to help you understand religion as a phenomenon.
Why would you want to go there?
Easy. Mm-hmm. My father went to seminary. All my friends was to seminary. I've been in the AME seminary. I've been reading these books. I've been reading religion. I know all this stuff like the back of my hand. I'm a religion philosophy major at Morehouse. I was attracted to Harvard because what makes it good for me might have made it bad for some other people. But the thing I liked about it was you didn't have to take particular courses. You just had to, they had like Area 1, which was like Bible and interpretation. Area 2 was like theology and culture. Area 3 was world religion. You could take any class from any school in the Harvard University system if you could make an argument that it fit in that category. Mm-hmm. So what that meant is your degree really could be multidisciplinary because you didn't have to take Old Testament. You didn't have to take pastoral care and counseling. You could take any class from any school anywhere at Harvard if you can make the argument that this achieves the objective of that area.
What kind of different classes that you took that were out of the box?
I took design from the School of Design. I took Intro to Marketing from the Business School. I took Politics and Culture from the Kennedy School of Government. So I was attracted to the fact that basically I could get, world-class information from world-class professors and not be tied into, reading Introduction to the New Testament, which I had already done.
How long was that program?
3 years.
And what was your life like in those 3 years in Boston?
Man, I was hardly in Boston, number one. Hardly went to class. I was in revival.
You was a preaching phenomenon.
I liked Harvard because, you go into class, there's 500 people. They give you a syllabus. You have section. And they give you the syllabus. You usually have an exam at the end. You can go to section if you want to, but the faculty are superstars. You just have office hours with them, write the paper at the end, and you barely have to be in class. So
you're at Harvard, you're preaching everywhere. You're career-wise, you're super focused. Economically, you're stable, to say the least, because you're living in Boston. You're at Harvard. What are your struggles at this? What are you struggling with?
Nothing. I'm a prince, Doc.
Yeah.
I don't have a care in the world.
Yeah.
I'm doing whatever I want to do.
So
until I forge my work study supervisor's signature on a payment and am forced to withdraw for a year.
So in your second year,
in my second year, like I had work study. I had work study. You know, like that you get for federal aid.
Yeah.
You know, like 100 hours. I'm just doing it because I have to do it. It's a prerequisite for my financial aid.
Some work study documents.
And you know, I was going somewhere. I couldn't get in. I just forged it, gave it to her. I was forced to withdraw for a year.
Did you have to go through a panel or something?
Yeah, they bought me before the academic whatever committee was.
Like Mark Zuckerberg, huh?
They said, you know, you're very gifted, but we feel as though if we let you get away with this, it will hurt you long term. So we're going to force you to withdraw, and we're snatching your scholarship. You're going to have to pay for the rest of your time here because we feel like there are people more deserving than you, and you don't appreciate how privileged you are.
Walk me through that.
Deeply embarrassing.
So who did you have? Who was the first call you have to make? Who are you leaning on during this time?
I don't call anybody because I'm so embarrassed. I decided to keep it to myself. I don't tell anybody for a very long time. I just try to solve the problem. I called one of my mentors, Congressman Floyd Flake. He said, I want to come work for you for this summer. When the summer was over, I said, man, I love this so much. Can I stay for the year? Knowing I couldn't go back for a year, but I didn't tell him that. But the world being as small as it is, that level being as tight as it is, that circle, it eventually came out, and he confronted me. And they made me sit out a year and get counseling, which I got from my dean at Morehouse, a guy named Lawrence Carter.
Who made you sit out for a year?
Harvard, academic study committee.
When you said it came out among the AME circle?
Yeah, it came out among the AME circles.
And then what did they do to you?
Nothing. They just shook their heads like, man.
Sounds like church people.
No, but talked about me in the sense that not as, more so like, you better be grateful that this happened now where the stakes are smaller than 10 years from now, where, you know, forging a work study document is one thing, forging an application for a mortgage loan or something else.
Gotcha.
So I think they were glad that it happened because up to that point, I was so gifted that the flaws in my character were overlooked.
Your dad never found out?
He did. He was more disappointed than angry, more embarrassed than wrathful. But I think for him, he's telling me all the time, he say all the time, where your gifts are going to take you, I've never been. I just want you to keep your feet on the ground and always do what's right. And so for him, I think even though it was embarrassing to him, I think he was glad that it happened because it clipped my wings at a time.
Your lesson humbled you
all day long.
The time that you were propelling.
All day long. Prefer it happen then than, you know, when the stakes were much higher.
How did they find out?
Well, I can't go back to school.
No, how did they find out you forged a document?
Oh, well, it's public information. If you call, they'll tell you.
No, I'm saying, how did you get caught?
They called my supervisor. Now, what's crazy is I was not the only one, but I was the only one who was withdrawn.
Yeah. Were you the only one black?
No, it was 4 of us black. I never spilt the beans.
Oh, you didn't snitch.
Mm-mm.
You held them down 10 toes. Yeah, you be a rapper. That's that rapper in you, man.
And what's crazy, I could have got out of it if I wanted to, but at the time, to be honest, I think I was embarrassed too.
You could have got out of it how?
Actually, one of my mentors was a faculty member at Harvard, and I had a lot of support. And some of the other people who had forged documents, I could have thrown them all under the bus.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you why I didn't.
Got you. Throwing them under the bus and you got off the hook.
Yeah, I mean, like we all did it at the same time.
Yeah.
And if you take the pictures of all these signatures, you'll see they all look alike.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't make a big fuss about it. I think probably because I was embarrassed.
When you come back to Harvard, is there acclimation process? Is there, well, before you get back to Harvard, that year,
I work in Washington, D.C.
You working in Washington, D.C. You landed on your feet.
105th Congress, yeah.
105th Congress.
Mm-hmm. And 6, actually. Mm-hmm.
Emotionally, how are you, though? Because you're kind of wearing, the weight of.
Well, no, I mean,
you're over it.
I'm over it because I always wanted to work for Congressman Flake. I wanted to work at his church, but at the time, again, he's AME pastor. He's a pastor. He's a congressman. I wanted to see how he was able to merge those, and so that year in D.C., actually a year and a half in D.C., was again one of those pivotal experiences. Taught me a lot of things. Actually, taught me about the synergy between religion and politics. It also taught me about the limitations of politics. He told me once, he told me many things, but one of the things he told me during that year, it was that politicians and preachers have several things in common. He said the most important thing they have in common is that they both can count. And he said if you have members in your church, you can be as political as you want to be. Because at the end of the day, what motivates a politician is votes. He was a policy cat, but he also understood that his influence was ultimately based on the fact that thousands of people came to his church every week. And he used that as a platform to help people. And his record of achievement in Southeast Queens is just incredible.
Absolutely.
Yeah, incredible.
Absolutely. He's another great that's often overlooked.
Yeah, so I'm in D.C.
You go back to Harvard,
and now I have to work.
Right, you lost your scholarship.
Lost my scholarship, so now I took a job at the Urban League, and I'm still preaching. And let's see, this is 95. I meet my first wife, who's a student at Harvard Law School. Get married that year, and then. She finished, and then
y'all finished simultaneously?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then what's the next thing after graduation?
Allen AME Church in Hartford, Connecticut. I get ordained, and now I'm at Allen AME Church in Hartford, Connecticut.
Your wife gets a job in Connecticut as well?
New York.
In New York, so she's commuting.
So we reside in Norfolk, in Norwalk, Connecticut, which is equidistant between Hartford and New York. So she's going into New York to do law.
And you never seen her before on campus before that third year?
No. I met her. Well, we ain't even talk, but I actually met her. I met her at a panel at the Kennedy School of Government called "The Age of the Age of the Role of Intellectuals in the Age of Crack."
Oh wow.
And
87, 89.
Yeah. And I went there, and I noticed that she had like a salt and pepper bob, like that was real popular back then. And up to that point, she was like the first normal black, at least normal to me, like normal black person that I saw. So I wasn't trying to holler to be honest. I was just being friendly. Cool, I was like, man, where are you from? She's like, oh, I'm an undergrad. I'm from Atlanta. My dad went to Morehouse. So instant connection, and we stay in touch, and then eventually get married. We were married our last year, and then she went to New York. I went to Harvard. I finally get my final ordination. I go to Hartford, And
how was that experience?
Hated it.
Why?
They sent me to a geriatric center. It was probably 10 people there. The median age was probably 90. And I just, I remember when my first Sunday, we actually drove by the church because it wasn't a church building, it was actually a house. Right. And I remember she looked at me and was like, so this is what you did all this for, to do that?
That's my question. Like, why do you think they did that?
It's the AME way. They send you to a small church, then they send you to a medium-sized church.
Despite your credentials.
Irrelevant. Everybody has credentials.
But your credentials
everybody
as a standpoint, Harvard,
don't make no difference.
Preaching everywhere.
Don't make no difference.
Don't make no difference.
We send you to a small church, like a startup church, then we're going to say, now all my Baptist friends are like, man, are you crazy? Because, in y'all's world. Now here's what's different. In the AME church, they move you around. Baptist church, they call you young because they want you to stay 30, 40 years. That's not the mentality in the AME church. We're going to send you to a small church. You move up to a medium-sized church. You get a big church. Then you run for bishop. It's very much, a corporate model. You ascend up the hierarchy.
Yeah.
So, you don't...
Entry-level position.
That's exactly what it is. To test your loyalty to the system. My father said, would reinterpret that. He said, it's to beat the ambition out of you, to make you loyal to the system. So
how long are you there?
I stay there maybe a year. I give the appointment back to the bishop. I said, I'm not doing this.
And what does that mean? What's the consequences of something like that?
I kept my ordination. I just said I didn't want to pass to the church. Then I went to business school.
You went to business school where?
University of Connecticut at Hartford. Got an MBA.
So you're out of preaching at this point?
Well, I'm still
preaching
on the circuit,
itinerarily,
but I'm not pastoring.
You're not pastoring. Are you still AME?
Yes.
So are you still like in all the benefits?
Well, benefits? I don't know what you mean.
Because don't y'all have like retirement benefits and everything? Not really. Oh, okay.
No, I keep my ordination, but I decide I don't want to do that. Pastor that church, I give the appointment back to the bishop, and I enroll. I'm actually what happens is I make a few calls, because I wanted to go to like a Big Ten business school. Guy I went to school with who was a managing director at Morgan Stanley was like, well, Joe DePron, what your approach is, one, you're a preacher. Two, you're going to be competing with people who want to be CEOs. If you don't want to be a CEO, then you should go to like a mid-sized regional school that would be happy to have somebody like you with your background. And so that's what I did. UConn gave me a full scholarship, and I got what's called the Ernst & Young something or another. Ernst & Young back then was a Big Six accounting firm.
Oh, Ernst & Young still big, yeah.
Right. So with the scholarship came guaranteed internships and employment when you got finished. So for the next year and a half, because I did an accelerated program, I went to business school during the day. I worked in the Hartford and New York offices of Ernst & Young in the afternoon, and I preached at night. When I graduated from UConn, Ernst & Young was bought by Capgemini, which was a French consulting firm. I thought that I would be more interested on the consulting side of things than the accounting side of things. Like it was like I could do it, but it was boring. So we went to like this global something in Disneyland, and I talked to the lady, so she gave me a shot. My first day, so the way that the consulting world worked back then, you would have to bid on a project. So like, let's say they were like process consultants. So say Coca-Cola hired Capgemini to teach them how to be more efficient in a bottling plant, right? You would have to go bid on the projects. They bring in all these consulting firms. You'd have to bid in it. Well, they asked me to be a part of this bidding project, and asked me to make the presentation. Well, of course, we know what happens, right? They find out I'm a preacher and I can present well. So they just send me to do all the bids because I can go in there, read a document they spent 6 months putting together and just present, and it worked. So
you're working in this corporate world. Mm-hmm. When do you get back into formally church pastoring?
Yeah. So the way the AME Church works is every 4 years there's something called a general conference. At the general conference, bishops are elected. Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. Bishops are elected. Then bishops are assigned. The way the AME Church is organized, the whole world is divided into 24 geographical units. Mm-hmm. The geographical units correspond roughly with regions of the country. So like the 1st district are the 6 states in the Northeast. The 5th district is everything from Missouri to California. And of course, districts vary by prestige, depends on how many churches, whatever. Mm-hmm. The more senior the bishop, the more chance you have an opportunity to be the bishop over that region. So now 2000 is coming, right? 2000 is coming. And one of my mentors, a guy named John Richard Bryant, has ascended in the hierarchy, and now he's going to be assigned for the first time a major district, right? Mm-hmm. 350 churches. It's called a 5th district from Missouri all the way to California, right? Mm. Well, I've always wanted to be in a major city because my study of Christianity suggested that it always did well when it was by water, right? In very diverse environments. So I find out the bishop is going to be assigned to the 5th. He's preaching at Howard University. I go to the service. Afterwards, I say, Bishop, you know me my whole life. I've been preparing my whole life to serve. If you go to the 5th district, I'd like to go with you. Oh, Joe, you just want to make money. You ain't serious about church. I was like, no, Bishop, I want to come help you. Your style of ministry, you've known me since I was a baby. I just put on the whole AME thing. He's like, all right, well, if I go, I'm going to need some help. He gets assigned to the 5th. He calls me and says, do you still want to come? I say, yes. Now, in my mind, I think I'm going to California. Mm-hmm. In my mind, I'm like, all right, Bishop. He says, well, come to this meeting. The meeting was in Oakland or somewhere. I think I got something for you. I go in the meeting. He says, I'm sending you to St. James AME Church in St. Louis. Now, of course, that wasn't what I had in mind, but he says, I'm going to bring you in St. Louis. We'll see how you do. And if things go well, I'll send you to California. So on October 31st, 2000, I got assigned to St. James AME Church in St. Louis, Missouri. Now, at the time, I'm living in New York. I'm traveling all over the world. But I decide I'm going to keep my job because I don't want to live in St. Louis. I'm going to keep my job. I'll just fly on the weekend because it's St. Louis. Like, who wants to be in St. Louis? Mm-hmm. Until I go. Shout out to goes, until I go to St. Louis. And I say, you know what? This might could be something.
You started to like it?
No, I just felt that
aura, possibility.
I felt that it was the kind of environment where all of these ideas I had for ministry and what I had been called to do could finally come to fruition. It was a big old church in the middle of the ghetto. My first Sunday, the first 3 candidates for mayor were there. It was a historic, traditional AME church, which at the time was one of the largest in the entire 5th district. So Bishop, he really set me up. Mm-hmm. He was like, all right, let's see what you can do. I'm 30 years old, married, and got a 3-month-old baby.
How long were you there?
I was there for 4 years. So I'm going because in 2004, a man named Chip Murray, who passed his first AME church, is scheduled to retire. Mm. So, you know, the AME church teaches you how to be strategic. I'm only coming because in my mind, I'm going to First AMA.
After you finish in St. James and St. Louis.
This is just
you did good in St. James. Church grew.
Church exploded.
Yeah,
I'm great. I'm like, okay, we have a test case. All right.
Quick question. Your pay is the same no matter what happens with the church?
No.
Okay.
It's not like the United Methodist Church where they give you a baseline.
Mm-hmm.
It's, you know, like if you can't raise it, you can't spend it. Now certain churches are stronger than others, and St. James was a very strong church. The church when I got there was 120 years old my first year. The church was so old that when I went to get a copy of the corporation's papers, they had to take me to a different building because the church was incorporated in 1868.
Wow.
The AME Church in Missouri was founded in the Missouri River because you remember Missouri was a slave state. Illinois was a free state.
Yep.
Daniel Alexander Payne started it. Black people couldn't gather in Missouri, so they had church in the river between the two states.
That's crazy.
I mean, like.
So what was the membership like when you got there?
The building sat, I think, 1,000. My first Sunday, which don't count, was maybe 500 people there. The next Sunday, it might have been 50. Maybe 60.
Because the mayor's was there. That's why.
Yeah, you know, it was.
And you was the new guy.
I'm the new
Check
guy.
him out.
Yeah, you know.
What did it grow to?
Yeah, when I left, we had 2 full services. Probably about 5,000 people joined the church in about a 3.5-year period.
So what happens with, you think you're going to First AME?
Yeah, so we had, you know, all right, Bishop, I got all the credentials. Now, of course, you know, I made my share of mistakes. You know, y'all think I'm flashy now. I was much flashier then. I'm this New York fast talking slick guy in conservative St. Louis. I'm young, I'm brash, I'm 30. I'm winning, you know. I'm doing y'all a favor in y'all backwards town, you know, all of that. So
you're a little pompous there, you know.
No, not pompous, more like bull in a china shop.
Yeah.
Just like y'all are crazy, y'all are behind, y'all don't know what you're doing.
Right.
I got all this education.
Big city boy. I went to Harvard.
I'm here to help y'all natives, you know, come up.
UConn's business school, worked
all
at
of that.
All
of that. Man, you can't tell me nothing.
Yeah.
You know, but they did, and that them people taught me how to pastor in St. Louis.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. But they knew that I was just there for a season. I knew I was just there for a season. And it was a great season, though. God taught me a lot.
Thank you for joining us on Nuance Conversations. We invite you to return next week as we continue this dialogue. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode and share this conversation with others who may find it valuable. Until next time.